Hi class, in this presentation we're going to focus on muscular dystrophy and senescence or aging and loss of function of our muscular system. So let's dive in and focus on muscular dystrophy. To review, dystrophins are groups that link the myofibrils, particularly the contraction of a sarcomere, to the sarcolemma of the cell membrane or the sarcolemma of the muscle fiber. And when we look at muscular dystrophy, it's many different kinds. There's a group of hereditary diseases. Ultimately, they all result in the same thing. Skeletal muscles degenerate and weaken. And as they degenerate and weaken, there's more fat and fibrous scar tissue building up within the skeletal muscle cells, or excuse me, skeletal muscles themselves. One of the most common kinds of muscular dystrophy is Duchenne, depending on how you pronounce it, muscular dystrophy. This is a sex linked, which means it's going to be related to the X and Y chromosomes. Thankfully, it's a recessive trait. And as we look at this, it's going to be an X linked trait. Boys are much more likely to receive this recessive disease because they have only one copy of the X chromosome. When we find this disease, it typically starts to be noticed between 2 and 10 years of age, so when the child is young. What we find is that in this disease, the protein dystrophin that links the sarcomere to the sarcolemma of the skeletal muscle cell is going to be damaged. And because of that, when the muscle contracts, the inside of those muscle cells will contract, the sarcomeres contract, but the sarcolemma doesn't smoothly contract with it. And what happens is that the inside of the muscle contracts, but not, or the inside of this muscle fiber contracts, but not the outside. This is going to cause cell death and a buildup of scar tissue within the muscle itself. These individuals can rarely live past the age of 20 years of age because some of these skeletal muscles, particularly of the thoracic cavity, think of the internal intercostals, external intercostals, diaphragm, scalenes, and to a lesser degree, the rectus abdominis, muscles that we use to breathe in and out, are going to degrade. Cardiac muscle has sarcomeres and striations within it, so it's also going to be affected by muscular dystrophy as well. Because this is a genetic disease, it is currently incurable. We, as of right now, don't have a way to cure this disease in an individual that is already living. As we're looking at this process, we're going to find that there are different other variations of muscular dystrophy. For instance, we can have fascioscapulohumeral muscular dystrophy. And this fascioscapulohumeral muscular dystrophy, as its name implies, is going to focus on the face, the scapula, and the humerus. So as we're looking at these individuals are going to have muscular dystrophy focused on the upper body. This is an autosomal dominant form of muscular dystrophy and affects both sexes equally because it's autosomal and not linked to the sex chromosomes. We also could have limb girdle dystrophy. And this is going to be some intermediate variations of muscular dystrophy that focuses on arm and then also pelvic girdles as well. So as we're looking at our muscles, sorry, I had a brain hiccup right there. In particular, we focused a lot in this chapter on skeletal muscle fibers, but there's more than just skeletal muscle fibers in our body. We also have smooth muscle and cardiac muscle. And for the most part, we aren't going to talk about them in that much detail. We just don't have the time needed to talk about them. However, we should focus a little bit on smooth muscles, in particular, this aspect of smooth muscles known as peristalsis. Now, as we're looking at peristalsis is going to be a wave of contraction that happens primarily to smooth muscles. It's typically going to occur in our digestive system, and these waves of contraction will move food from the esophagus through the digestive tract, ultimately all the way to the colon, and move all the food through the digestive system, these waves of contraction. And as this is happening, we'll have a stress relaxation response or receptive relaxation. What does this mean? This means that other hollow organs, including organs of the digestive system, are going to fill gradually instead of just being flabby and open to filling and having lots of room for liquids and fluids to slosh around within them. They are going to maintain just enough tension to keep the fluids inside of those organs from sloshing around. So as the tissue is stretched out, it will briefly contract just a little bit and then relax a little bit more. And one of the things that this helps to prevent, in addition to this excessive sloshing, is it prevents emptying while we're trying to fill up these organs. Let's talk about senescence, or the loss of function of our muscular system. Now, we talked about muscular atrophy in this recording. The muscular atrophy, Duchenne muscular dystrophy is going to cause the degradation of skeletal muscle fibers and the buildup of fat and scar tissue within our muscles. We're also going to have atrophy of our muscles. Atrophy, unlike muscular dystrophy, is just a loss of tissue volume. And we're typically going to have a lot of atrophy of the cardiac muscle system, or cardiomyocytes, and the skeletal muscles. And as those muscle fibers are lost, they're going to be replaced with adipose, or fat. Now, for everyone, male, female, muscle strength is going to peak in the early 20s. Females, it's typically more late teens to early 20s. For males, it's late 20s to even early 30s-ish. I know for me in particular, my muscular strength peaked when I was 31 years old. And I remember being very confused because I wasn't working out particularly hard at that point in my life. But all of a sudden, I was setting all kinds of PRs all over the weight room, lifting heavier weights than I've ever lifted at any point in my life. I'm now older than 31, and I've gotten weaker again. Crud. What we find is that by the time we reach 80 years of age, we've lost about half of our total muscular strength and endurance that we had compared to our peak. These fast twitch fibers, the type 2 fibers, are going to be the most severely affected as we age. So in other words, as we get older, our ability to lift heavy things and move fast is going to disproportionately be lost compared to our ability to have endurance exercise. And that's okay, because really it's more important that we maintain posture and can maintain those slow twitch fibers in terms of quality of life than it is to bench press 400 pounds. Something else that happens as we age that causes us to lose strength in our skeletal muscle system is we have fewer myofibrils within our skeletal muscle fibers, which means we have ultimately less cross-bridge cycling or less actin-myosin interactions. We also have smaller mitochondria that can produce less ATP. We're going to have less glycogen, less myoglobin, and less of those creatine phosphate and myokinase enzymes. We also are going to have a degradation of the nervous system. The motor neurons in particular in our spinal cord become less efficient in transmitting acetylcholine to our skeletal muscle fibers to contract them. Our sympathetic nervous system also becomes less efficient. We haven't talked about this in detail yet. You could think of the sympathetic nervous system as the fight or flight, the stress response nervous system. So as we age, our ability to handle stress becomes less efficient, and that means that we have less blood going to our muscles, which means we fatigue more, we have slower healing, and because of slower healing, we have more scar tissue build up in our muscles as we work out while we get older. So this was one of the shorter lecture recordings for the muscular system. If you have any questions, please feel free to post them on the class discussion board or shoot me an email. And as always, happy studies.